What's up, guys? Undead here. Today we got a rambly, unorganized discussion video I want to make for you. And we're going to be talking about Frost DK and how it looks in BFA, right? We've seen pre-patch. We want to talk about how it looks at 120 in BFA now. Before we start, though, I want to mention a few things. One, the guide writers for Frost on both Wowhead and Icy Veins got an upgrade. We have boys that are pretty active in the Frost DK Discord that are now in charge of writing those guides. So if you're looking for a written version of that's going to be up to date pretty consistently, I would check those out. I'll give you links in the description below in case you haven't checked them out, but they're pretty easy to find. Two, Blizzard is going to do a mass tuning wave between the time they release Heroic and Normal Uldir and when they release Mythic. So a lot of this information may change that week. That's going to be the week of September 4th till September 11th. It's just kind of how they do things. But it'll be good to get a sense of like how things scale, what scales with what, so it's easier to adapt when that happens. And three, when you're deciding between Frost and Unholy, and I think this is something that like a lot of people overlook, it's not necessarily the spec that does the most damage that's going to be like the meta spec for a raid. And if we look as recently as Antorus, for most of Antorus, Unholy and Frost were very close in damage. Depending on your gear, Unholy could do more damage. But the way the specs played, primarily Mirror Ball for Frost, the artifact trait, as well as having on-demand damage without a lack of ramp and having consistent damage throughout the fight rather than it being fit into big cooldowns, just worked for the fight style of Antorus, and that's why you saw Frost be like the meta spec for Antorus, even though the damage wasn't significantly better than Unholy. So thinking about those things, having those in mind when it comes to making a decision whether or not you're going to play Frost or Unholy, I think that's important. With that said, Frost is going to be... I have no question that Frost is going to be viable for Uldir. It's going to be viable for Mythic Plus. It's just a matter of how good it is and how it compares to Unholy. You'll see me playing both probably when BFA launches. So with that, let's get into it. I think let's start out. Let's look at what we're playing as far as talent builds go on live right now. Let's start with that. Now on live, I think we have one talent that's an always take, no matter the situation, forever, whatever. I think Breath of Sindragosa is your go-to all the time. Obliteration may be better damage-wise in Mythic Plus, but I think having Breath for priority damage, for if there's a pack where you have a mob that you really need to get rid of, or better boss damage, Breath of Sindragosa is just king. I think boss damage still matters. Even if it's fortified weak, your boss damage is a significant portion of the damage you'll do in a key. So I think Breath of Sindragosa is a must-take all the time. And I think that transfers into BFA at 120 as well. Is Obliteration that far behind? No. If you don't want to play Breath, that's fine. You can play Obliteration. But I think Breath is always going to be the play. And then we have on live right now, we have Cold Heart, which I think is pretty much a go-to. But in Mythic Plus, you could definitely see some use out of Inexorable Assault. I think I like it better than Cold Heart in Mythic Plus, so that I don't have to run the chess piece legendary in Mythic Plus. And like you run something like Bracer's Cephas or Bracer's Pants, rather than running the chess piece for Cold Heart, because Cold Heart loses a little bit of value when you take off the chess piece. The opportunity cost is a little bit higher now, since you're only getting this Cold Heart damage out of it rather than the chest. But that's that. Other than that, on the other tiers, you pretty much have two choices everywhere. Runic Attenuation and Murderous Efficiency are very close here. Frozen Pulse and Frost Scythe are very close here. Gathering Storm and Frostream's Fury are very close here. I think that's going to transfer pretty well into BFA, but we'll get into that as we go. So we're looking at live, and Breath you take all the time, and then those are your options on the other tiers. So let's look at how things scale, right? Because it's important to understand that some things are going to scale with different stats, and we have very different stats at 120. So currently, if we look at my stat loadout, we have 29 crit, 16 haste, 10 verse, 59 mastery. If we look at beta, and granted, I'm geared at 363 equipped. I think this is about what everybody's going to be close to heading into Mythic Week, depending on how hard you grind Mythic Plus during the week of September 4th. leading into September 11th when Mythic releases. This is going to be close to about the item level people have heading into Mythic Uldir. So at this item level, heading into the raid, I have 12% crit versus the 29 on live. 16% haste, same as live, but this is me stacking haste on beta. This is me not stacking, this is me trying to get rid of haste on live. 39% mastery versus 59 on live. This is trying to stack mastery. And versatility, which is pretty coincidental. I'm not trying to do anything with that, but 7 versus 10. So we see we lose 20% here on our mastery value. We lose 18% on our crit value, a little bit on verse, and haste is the same. So when we're talking about these talents, it's important to keep that in the back of your head, put it that way. That some of these things are going to scale very differently because we have much lower secondary stats. For instance, we'll talk about first tier here, right? Cold Heart currently scales with both the Chest Legendary, it scales with the Bracers Legendary, and it scales with our Mastery. So losing Bracers has a huge impact on Cold Heart because every time you cast Cold Heart, you're in Pillar of Frost. So it's losing 15% damage right there. Secondly, the opportunity cost we talked about earlier. Cold Heart is now, you're only getting the talent worth of damage. So that rune that you're spending is not double dipping in 2 places now. It's only getting the talent worth of damage. So the cost of spending that rune essentially is more, if that makes sense. It's like technically it's not more, but you're getting less value per rune for that Chains of Ice that you're casting. And also our lower mastery values. So it's just going to do less damage. Whereas Inexorable Assault loses a little bit of value from Bracers, but not all of this damage is always in Pillar of Frost. So, right, sometimes this isn't losing that 15%. It's more spread. It doesn't lose value from our other legendaries. Lack of mastery causes us to lose value because it is frost damage. And Icy Talons really isn't affected. This is just more attack speed. Your whites do more damage. Mastery doesn't affect it. It may become more useful because our crit values are low to enable more killing machine procs. Because our haste and crit is very low now, that it's few and far between when you're getting those killing machine procs. So maybe Icy Talons boosts that up. I think in a pure single target, these are my thoughts on how I think this is going to play out. In a pure single target situation, in a raid situation, I think the Cold Heart will be the play. It's still priority damage, which is massively important in a lot of raid fights, especially you have an ad that you have to burn down quickly. If you can dump a Pillar of Frost Cold Heart into them, that's huge. I think in keys, Inexorable Assault will end up taking over. I think Cold Heart is too annoying to play around in keys, especially where sometimes you want to be using Chains of Frost as utility, or Chains of Ice as utility rather than damage. Inexorable Assault isn't punished by that, whereas Cold Heart kind of is. And it's just consistent. It's just damage. It's extra damage on your priority target. That's it. So that's my thoughts for this first tier. Second tier, Murderous Efficiency is obviously hurt by the lack of Killing Machine procs. This only gets value when you have Killing Machines. The fewer Killing Machine procs you have, the less value Murderous Efficiency has. I lost 18% crit, gaining 10 levels. That's a huge deal when it comes to how many procs I'm going to get. As it is, I take Runic Attenuation. These are very close to each other at 110. I think at 120, Runic is going to take over. This is a random procs per minute. So this is unaffected by your stats. Doesn't scale with fucking anything. It just exists. And we're pretty resource starved. I think this is going to be the play. Horn of Winter I'd like to see changed to a charge system where it has less impact on a shorter cooldown. Just so you can actually get value out of this. But I don't think it's going to happen. I don't like Horn. Some people do. It's not far enough behind to be not worth taking if you do like it. I don't like having cooldowns that I end up sitting on and yikes, not using as they come off cooldown because for whatever reason my resources, I got lucky procs and I'm not in a place where I can use Horn. I don't like that. I'm going to be running Runic. That's that. Do with what you will with that. And I think that's the play for both raids and Mythic Plus. I think Runic is going to be the play. 58, obviously the raid encounters, we'll see if we need stuns, blinds, grips, whatever. In keys, Blinding Sleet is insane. With everybody having their AoE stuns removed, having an AoE interrupt is huge, especially now Blood Elves can AoE interrupt. It's a bigger deal to have this. 1 minute cooldown. decently long cooldown, but I think it's a very good talent, and I think that's just what you take in keys. Raids, you take whatever the fuck makes sense, really. Right? It's gonna change between the fights. Now, the level 60 tier, single target, Frozen Pulse, and Frost Scythe are already close at 110. They're gonna continue to be close at 120. I think pure single target, I'll probably still take Frozen Pulse if they're as close as they are, because there's no way to really fuck Frozen Pulse up. Whereas Frost Scythe, it's possible to not get your maximum value out of it on single target. But this is a playstyle choice, really, when it comes to single target. AoE, Frost Scythe's just so good. In keys, you take Frost Scythe, right? Like, we were dropping Gathering Storm, which is an insane talent for Frost Scythe and Legion, because it was so good in keys. So, take Frost Scythe. I don't think Avalanche is there. Avalanche is especially hurt by our lack of stats now. Or our lack of resources, rather. So because we're casting less obliterates. And when you're casting less obliterates, you're getting fewer Rhyme procs. So you're getting less value out of Avalanche. I think maybe later in the expansion, this is something to keep an eye on. If we ever end up in more of a GCD capped situation where we are getting a shitload of Rhyme procs because we have the runes to be dumping obliterates all the time, Avalanche may become valuable. They could also tune this to just be strong as fuck. Who knows? But for right now, I would Frost Scythe is a safe play for every situation. Pure single target, you might take Frozen Pulse. This talent, take whatever you want. Wraithwalk mobility. Death Pack's an insane personal survivability cooldown. It's really good. This will be my default for sure. And Permafrost is just what it is. It's a shield. A small shield when you auto attack. It is what it is. The 90 tree is where I'm a little bit sad. The idea of an AoE runic power spender is excellent, right? Glacial Advance, it sounds awesome. It is awesome. But I don't think that the damage is there for it to be worth taking a talent that gives you absolutely zero benefit single target in any situation, right? Even in a Mythic Plus. Maybe you're doing low keys and you're just trying to smash through trash and do them as fast as possible. You take Glacial Advance, maybe. And your boss, like the bosses just fall over, it doesn't matter. Maybe that's a possibility. But I think that you're never using this single target. It's like 100 or 200 more damage than Frost Strike for 5 extra runic power. It's just not. It's not worth. So it's purely an AoE talent, and it's competing with Gathering Storm, which is insane single target and also insane in AoE. Like think about all the times you took Gathering Storm, you didn't take Frost Scythe, and you were just cleaving shit down in Legion, whether it be in a key or a raid. High command comes to mind, right? A lot of times I don't run Frost Scythe on high command. I run pure priority damage and cleave with Gathering Storm, and I'm still sitting up there with the cleave boy or with the boys that are just spamming AoE because of how strong Gathering Storm is. This hasn't changed. It's still well, has it changed? Maybe this was 15 before. It's 10% on pre-patch. It's 10% here. Whatever. Maybe it was 15 before. It's still strong. Put it that way. So I don't think the Glacial Advance is going to end up being taken. Just due to the nature of Gathering Storm. Frostworm's Fury loses a little value from live. A lot of people that are running Frostworms in keys are running with the pants to get the additional minute-and-a-half cooldown stun. Obviously, you cut the cooldown this in half. It does a lot more damage now too. So with the removal of the legendary pants, I think Frostworm's Fury becomes less viable in keys, and I think Gathering Storm ends up being your default. You may be able to play around with stuff and find situations like maybe there's a certain dungeon where you really don't need boss damage, but the keys or the trash is huge. You want to take Glacial Advance. We'll see kind of how that meta plays out when BFA launches. And then last tier, we talked about it before. I think Breath's always the go-to. If you're playing Obliteration, I would take Murderous Efficiency all the time. Just a note here, these two have great synergy with each other. So if you are playing Obliteration, ignore what I said about Runic. I would take Murderous Efficiency. I would make sure you're playing Frost Scythe with that as well, just so you can benefit from those Killing Machine procs with Frost Scythe, whereas Frozen Pulse just kind of chills during that situation. It is what it is. And that's that. I mean, that's my. I don't think much is changing as we hit 120. And let's look at Azerite traits quickly here too. I don't think there's nothing here that really affects your playstyle all that much, but let's take a look at them. This is what I think is one maybe our strongest Azurite trait. And again, these are, I'm more than certain the numbers on these are all going to change by the time we get to Mythical Deer. Like almost, I'm pretty sure every single Azurite trait is going to have some sort of change in numbers by the time we get there. Somebody's going to figure out for every class, this is busted, this is busted, this is busted in Heroic, and then they're going to shuffle everything around and figure out, which is annoying as shit, by the way, because you have to farm these pieces out, but I'm almost positive it's going to happen. So first, let's talk about Icy Citadel. This is arguably our strongest. When Pillar of Frost expires, your strength is increased by number for 6 seconds. This effect lasts 2 seconds longer for each Obliterate and Frost Scythe critical strike during Pillar of Frost. Now you read this and you think, I want to play Obliteration. I have all these guaranteed crits, blah, 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 blah. Essentially, it extends this buff by another, 14 seconds, almost guaranteed every time you Pillar. So you get a 20-second buff. After a 15-second buff, you have very little downtime on not having some sort of strength buff. And the effect of these can stack too. So if you have 3 pieces on, you can have a 1500, for example, at 340 item level, 1500 bonus strength for that duration. Now it also benefits, so this is very good with Obliteration, obviously. It also benefits during Breath, because during Breath, you have these extra resources, because you're spending Runic Power off GCD, so you have all these globals to just dump Obliterates, and if they crit, they crit. If you get Killing Machine procs during that, awesome. Like, you're dumping like crazy during Breath, so oftentimes your Pillar during Breath also extends just as long. Obviously, you're getting less value out of your other pillars, but every third pillar getting huge value out of this Icy Citadel after, and then having your Breath still have a strength buff is pretty strong. So keep an eye out for that. It doesn't really, it interacts well with, I think, all our talent choices, so it doesn't really affect what we take. It's just a good trait. Then we have Latent Chill. Frost Strike deals additional damage if you have at least 3 empty runes. Widely, this is just fucking passive. If you're playing the class properly, you almost always have 3 empty runes. I guess it has synergy with Frozen Pulse, just in the sense that you're going to be dumping runes to be there, but not really. It's just damage, right? Like that's a boring ass trait. It is what it is. It's damage. It's boring. What are you gonna do? Then we look at Killer Frost. Frost Strike deals additional damage with each hit, and has a 15% chance on critical strikes to grant Killing Machine. Now, this sounds like it would have some value, right? But in reality, it is a 15% chance on critical strike. So not only do you have, now I have a 12% chance my Frost Strike is going to crit. 12% chance. If it does, I now have another 15% chance that it'll grant me Killing Machine. You're not going to get a lot of value out of it. It will increase the value of Murderous Efficiency. Like, I'm not going to say it won't increase the value, right? Because you will have more Killing Machine procs. It's just a matter of the number is probably going to be insignificant as all hell. Like, it's keep an eye out for it, basically, right? Like, if things get tuned and maybe this chance increases, or they buff our crit in some way, maybe this makes it so you swap to Murderous Efficiency if you have this trait. Don't expect it, put it that way. Oh yeah, let's find the other. We have 3 other traits. Let's find these boys. Frozen Tempest. I actually really like this trait. I don't know that it's tuned well enough to be good, but I like this in keys. I like running one of this. So Remorseless Winner deals an additional damage, and the first time Remorseless Winner deals damage to 3 different enemies, you gain Rhyme. So essentially, when you're running up to a Mythic Plus pack, you're guaranteed a Rhyme proc when you hit Remorseless Winner. So you can open with Winner into a Rhyme proc, and then go about your Frost Scythe spam. I think this is nice. It gives us an extra Rhyme proc every 20 seconds. That's cool. I guess it does increase the value of Avalanche, because it's more Rhyme procs. I don't think it even comes close to increasing it enough. And also, it's a guaranteed free Rhyme proc during Remorseless Winter to benefit from Gathering Storm. So I like this. I think it's a good one of. I don't know that it's tuned well enough to be worth, but I think it's cool. It's pretty passive, but I think it's cool. Glacial Contagion. I think this is the dumbest trait they've made. I hate this. Your auto attacks have a chance to apply Glacial Contagion, dealing 1400 frost damage over 14 seconds. Obliterate deals additional damage to targets infected with contagion. I guess it's neat that you could be tabbing through to targets to make sure you have this dot on them. It just seems insignificant to me. It makes Obliterate do more damage. This scales negatively with taking Frost Scythe because it doesn't proc on Frost Scythe from what I understand. I could be wrong on that. Flame me if I am. But from what I understand, it does not affect Frost Scythe, so it just has like a negative effect if you're running Frost Scythe and you're fighting more. Like, even if you're tabbing through, it would be cool if you tab through, you get it on a bunch of things, and then Frost Scythe procs the damage as well. Like, that's neat. That's a cool interaction. So I hope that it ends up in a place where it plays off Frost Scythe. But for right now, it's really boring. It's underwhelming. It's not very much damage anyway. And what do we have? I think we have one more, I want to say. Should be 6 Frost unique ones. I'm not going to talk about the other boys because they're mostly passives and they are shared across specs. So we're just going to talk about the Frostbite. Let me find these. Where's the last one? Oh, here we go. Echoing Howl. When empowered by Rhyme, Howling Blast causes a secondary burst of icy wind around you that deals 1100 frost damage to nearby enemies. This is basically Avalanche. This is basically another Avalanche. But you don't have to lose Frost Scythe to have it. Current tuning, it's pretty good. It's boring, but it's pretty good. And this'll get better as we get further in the expansion and get more secondary stats and have more resources to spend on obliterates. I don't know. It's never going to be exciting, put it that way. It's just damage. So really, there's not a lot of Azerite traits that have the ability to impact our talent choices or are enabled by our talent choices. It's really just, I guess, Icy Citadel maybe pushes you into wanting to run Obliteration more than Breath, because you're inherently getting more value out of it with Obliteration for sure. It's just a matter if that value adds up to enough to make it so that Breath's not worth taking. I don't think that's going to be the case, but I mean, I've been wrong about many things throughout the course of my life. So with that said, I think Frost, like I said, Frost is going to be viable for sure. Whether or not it's the very best, whether or not it's better than Unholy, I don't know. I'll be playing both. I'll probably honestly be playing Unholy first just because I want a weapon that I can tank with and also do damage. But I'll definitely still be playing Frost. I'm more than happy to answer questions. If you like this video, I know this is unorganized. It's kind of, I don't know. I like doing these unorganized, rambling type videos. If you guys like this kind of content or you want me to get my shit together and be a little bit more organized about what I'm talking about, let me know in the comments or pop in my Twitch channel and let me know. I'm shit at YouTube. It's much better to get my attention on Twitch. You can find me at twitch.tv/undadtv. I'll pop a link in the description. Again, the links below in the description will be for the WoW head guides. I'm super confident those boys are going to keep those up to date. If you disagree with anything here, let me know too. And I'll see you next time. I want to do one of these for Unholy pretty soon too, so keep an eye out. Thanks, boys.